what is up guys? Welcome back to Life on the Wrist. Hope you guys are doing well today. Auction season is continuing. I know that this happened last week, but I thought I would cover my favorite lots from the Christie's watch auction. We did cover some of our favorite lots and we gave you our predictions on some of those lots, both in our podcast and as well as our YouTube channel, and we had a corresponding article for that YouTube video. So if you haven't seen that, you can go check that out. But what we're going to be doing today is going through a couple of lots. I've got 6 lots that I'm going to go through, which I thought were pretty interesting. They had interesting results. I thought they were really cool watches, and so I'm going to give you kind of my thoughts on what they ended up fetching for. What was pretty interesting about watching the Christie's auction, which is something that I did, is that it was a very different environment compared to the Phillips watch auction, and I think that's pretty interesting. You have 2 auction houses that they sell extremely high quality watches, but they have a different feel depending on which auction room you're actually in. Both of these, Phillips had their Geneva watch auction, Christie's had their rare watches auction that took place in Geneva, and the watches really differed between the two, and the kind of environment was quite different as well. Getting into the watches, I went over some, like I said, over on our podcast and our predictions video and our corresponding article, but one of the watches that I spoke about there was lot number 1. This was the Patek Philippe reference 3800. Manufactured in 2000. This was the one with the Roman numerals, which I thought was pretty interesting, different kind of vibe for a Royal Oak. What I thought was really interesting about this one is it was different. Center seconds, date at 3 o'clock. I thought it would probably go for more than the estimate bracket, but it actually ended up going towards the lower end of the bracket for 27,500 Swiss francs. I thought this was an interesting result for this watch, especially the first lot, but at least it was within estimates. It might have to do with the case quality. There is, if you look at the bezel of this watch, it's pretty scratched up, so it's a worn Nautilus for sure, but a cool one nonetheless. Moving on to the next lot, I spoke about the yellow gold version of this, but I'm going to be talking about the platinum Audemars Piguet diamond set limited edition open face skeletonized Quantième perpetual calendar pocket watch with moon phase and leap year indication. This was a really interesting watch. There were 2 of these watches. There was a yellow gold version and then this platinum one. They were both limited editions. This is number 3 of 20, so there's 20 of each created. This is number 3. And I thought that pocket watch collecting is kind of coming back. I noticed that we did a video on pocket watches, and the video's kind of seen a lot of traffic recently in our article as well, where we discussed this. And I think that maybe pocket watch collecting is actually coming back a little bit. These absolutely crushed estimates. The yellow gold went for a lot more, but this platinum went for crazy amounts. So the estimate was between 20,000 and 40,000 Swiss francs. This went for 156,250 Swiss francs. That was the price that this watch realized. I think this shows limited edition watches are obviously going to fetch premium. Audemars Piguet inspired pocket watches, because it looks very much like the Royal Oak, are going to do very well. Yeah, I think just pocket watches in general are coming back. I have another pocket watch that I'm going to talk about as well, and I think that also kind of proves that I think they're going to be coming back even more. This was manufactured in 1992, so a fairly modern, if you want to call it, pocket watch. I think the chain was also really interesting on this watch. I think it gave it quite a cool look. And I mean, if you look at the complication on this pocket watch, it's absolutely phenomenal. All right, moving to our third lot, and this was one that I was super excited about. I said everyone should jump on the Christie's watch auction if you are interested in buying a Jaeger LeCoultre Memovox. This is a Memovox. It's alarm. It has a date at 3 o'clock. It comes with box and papers from 1961. This is a watch that I've said on this channel, I've spoken about on this channel as being some of the best value you can get in vintage watches. It's relatively affordable in vintage watches. It comes with a very interesting complication where you have hammers that basically act as an alarm. But if you think about other complications that use hammers, you think of things like minute repeaters, which are fairly expensive. But this Memovox obviously is not as expensive. The alarm complication, basically those hammers hit against the side of the case and it can alert you to what the time is. This is box papers in very good condition from Jaeger LeCoultre, so it's not just from LeCoultre, it's from JLC in Switzerland. This was running on the caliber 825 automatic movement, really beautiful silver dial, 37 millimeters. It's just like the quintessential vintage watch that you want. That's off the beaten path for something like a vintage Omega or a vintage Rolex. The estimate for this lot was 1,800 and 3,500 Swiss francs, and this is one of the watches I said, if you are interested in vintage watches and you want to get that experience of bidding on a watch at auction, which I think every vintage watch collector should do, this was the lot for you. This ended up realizing a price of 3,250 Swiss francs, which is towards that upper estimate, which I think is really cool. I think this again shows vintage watch collecting can be approachable, and you can participate in auctions and get something like this for a fairly good price. There were some other JLC watches that were fairly affordable as well during this auction, and I think that's something that kind of it stood out to me when I thought about Christie's, and I said, you know, there are some affordable watches in this auction. If you look at this watch again, like I just thought the condition on this watch was absolutely insane, and I think this is a perfect step into vintage watch collecting. I hope it went to someone who perhaps was getting into vintage watch collecting or is a big Memovox fan. I hope that was the case, and congratulations to whoever ended up winning this lot. I said I would return to pocket watches, and I'm going to return with lot number 62. This was the Patek Philippe perpetual calendar, minute repeater, moon phase, 4-year cycle, indication, 24-hour, and equation of time pocket watch that was retailed by Baya in Zurich. This is the reference 880-1. This was sold or manufactured in 1974 by Patek Philippe. This is an extremely complicated pocket watch that basically has everything you can possibly think of. I said that I thought pocket watches were coming back. The estimate was between 75,000 and 110,000 Swiss francs. This ended up breaking through that upper estimate and selling for 137,500 Swiss francs. So broke through that upper estimate, and I think again shows the resilience of pocket watches, but also the collectability might be coming back. Obviously the fact that it was signed by Bayer probably had some sort of influence on the price that it ended up realizing, but nonetheless, this is an awesome watch. Congratulations to the new owner, and I'm really glad to see maybe pocket watches have a place within vintage watch collecting. It's going to be so interesting because there were some clocks that also sold at this auction, but I think that may be the next sort of phase to come in. But we'll talk about that in another video. The next lot I want to talk about is lot number 136. This was an extremely beautiful Rolex 6062. This is a triple calendar moon phase Rolex. You don't really see a lot of classical complicated Rolexes. This was manufactured in 1953, and it's very, very difficult to find 6062s. There's obviously the Bao Dai and very, very famous ones that have sold at auction. But this watch was an interesting one. It actually comes with a service dial, which people have their own opinions on service dials, but I was interested to see what this would actually sell for. It's a 35mm watch, chronometer certified in 1951 and 1954. Had a service dial, probably, you know, it's interesting to me to see what these types of lots will fetch for. The case itself, I think, is yellow gold. It has a really beautiful look to it. The estimate of this watch was between 60 and 120,000 Swiss francs. It ended up going for 175,000 Swiss francs. Crazy, broke the upper estimate. I think it shows what service dials, you know, maybe the opinion on service dials, I think the reason why it really broke through was the fact that you're not going to find a lot of 6062s out there in the wild, and so obviously this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for any collector who's looking for complicated Rolex, and also just for a vintage Rolex collector. It's very, very difficult to come by these. There's only about 142 examples that people have found in recent years, so a very, very rare example of this in yellow gold. The last lot I wanted to talk about was one of the lots that I kind of ended my my last video on, which was lot number 210. This was the Patek Philippe reference 1518 in pink gold. This is a perpetual calendar chronograph with moon phase and tachometer dial that was manufactured in 1951. It was sold in Caracas. One of the things I spoke about this watch was it looked like there was some age to this watch, right? So if you look at the actual case, you can see a beautiful oxidation around the kind of bezel of this watch. If you turn it over, there is an engraving, so that sometimes people don't want to buy watches with engravings because it's not really personal to them. But then what's interesting is when you zoom up onto the dial of this watch, you can see some sort of uneven aging and sort of some black spots around the outside of this dial. It's also interesting that the applied hour markers also are not, they didn't patina at the same time. You can see the 11 looks a little bit more golden than the 4, which is a little bit darker. So there were just a lot of questions in my mind about what are people going to think about these little uneven bits of aging that you can see on this watch. Obviously the 1518 is an extremely desirable watch. I think that there's only a handful of pink gold versions of this watch, about 58 in pink gold. So it's a very rare watch. It's a very desirable reference, but it isn't the perfect original condition or perfectly patinaed watch that's just aged completely evenly, both in the case and the dial. It isn't that. It's kind of like a, I don't want to say this is no hate towards this watch, but it's kind of like the stepchild, if you want to call it like that, in all the novels that you read about. So I was like, I don't really know what it's going to do. The estimate was between 450 and 900,000 Swiss francs. I really was like, I could totally see it go for between the estimate, because of all these little things. Especially when you're looking at an estimate like this, it's a small group of vintage watch collectors that are probably going to be bidding on this, and then an even smaller vintage watch collecting group that probably would say, you know what, I kind of like the uneven patina that this watch has. Well, it ended up breaking through that top estimate. It went for 1,350,000 Swiss francs, so a really incredible price for this watch. I think it shows what a 1518 can go for, what it will go for, and how desirable it is by collectors. I thought it was a fairly interesting result. I really love the oxidation on the case of this watch. I think it gives it a really nice kind of golden hue to it. Yeah, congratulations to the new owner. I think Christie's was another example of the resilience of the vintage watch collecting community, as well as the modern, because this is kind of, there were some modern pieces in both Phillip's and Christie's auction. Collectors are here. Collectors want to buy these watches, and really the pandemic hasn't had such a bad influence on watch collecting and vintage watch enthusiasts, and really getting your hands on references that you really enjoy. I'll put a link in the description to this auction so you can see these lots. We'll also talk about this on our podcast. We probably released it yesterday, so we can talk about this one as well. So be sure to check out these lots. If you didn't see some of our other videos, be sure to check out some of our other auction news videos. We have a playlist called Watch Auctions. So be sure to check that out. If you are new to the channel, be sure to hit that subscribe button if you like these types of videos. We're watch enthusiasts, vintage watch lovers, and so we basically create videos about watches. Be sure to check out our article, our corresponding article for this video. Every video we create an article where we discuss this watch a little bit more, or our video a little bit more in depth. So be sure to head over to lifeonthewrist.com. You can check out our editorial section there. Let me know in the comment section below what you thought about these lots, what your favorite lot was. I'd love to hear your thoughts, and if you wouldn't mind smashing that like button for the YouTube algorithm so that these videos can get to more vintage watch enthusiasts who would like to see some of our videos. And with that said, guys, thank you so much for watching, and until next time.